My name is Courtney, and I am 32 years old. I never imagined that a quiet Thursday morning could transform into the most humiliating and bewildering moment of my life. Yet, here I am, rooted in the driveway, staring at my shirts, jackets, and shoes, tumbling from the upstairs window, while my boyfriend's ex, Lauren, yells from above. Her face is flushed with fury, and behind her stands Jake, her 17-year-old son, wearing that smug, knowing look that has haunted me for months. Get out, Courtney! Lauren's voice rings sharp across the yard. Every last thing. Only hours ago, we had shared a peaceful breakfast. I had poured Evan his coffee, smiled at Jake as he dozed lazily on the couch, and for a moment, harmony reigned. But that morning calm was a cruel illusion. Now, as I watch the chaos unfold, I realize how deep the manipulation ran, and how completely I had been blind. I met Evan 4 years ago at a local art gallery. He was charming, patient, and kind, the kind of man who made the world feel a little softer. He had 2 children with Lauren, and I never intended to replace them. I only wanted to love them in the way a stepmother could, quietly and respectfully. Jake was 13 at the time, a reserved boy with an air of distance that tugged at my heart. I made a promise to myself. I would never compete with his father, but I would always be there for him, fully and without conditions. And for a while, it worked. The first 2 years with Evan and Jake were blissful. Jake kept his distance, and I respected it. I helped him with homework when he asked, drove him to his friends' houses, and made sure he had what he needed. I even bought a bigger house to give him his own room. Evan was happy. I thought we were thriving. Then, subtle changes began. About 9 months ago, Jake started leaving remarks in Lauren's presence that I only caught in passing. They seemed harmless, almost affectionate, but beneath them was a sharpness I couldn't ignore. He would praise Lauren, suggest she deserved someone who adored her completely, and hint that I wasn't enough. I dismissed it as teenage admiration for his mother, yet it slowly gnawed at the edges of our home. When I tried talking to Evan about it, he shrugged, saying it was just Jake being a normal teen. But I felt the shift. I began noticing the strange glances Lauren would cast at me, the subtle doubt in her eyes whenever Jake said something unusual. 4 months ago, the dynamic shifted further. Jake became a master of performance. When Lauren was home, he joked with me, laughed, and seemed friendly. The instant she left, he went cold, curt monosyllables, barely acknowledging my presence. My attempts at connection were met with indifference. It was disorienting, like I had vanished into thin air. Then came the first major conflict, a car. Not any car, a $35,000 BMW, the kind of vehicle his friends flaunted. I tried to reason with him, explaining the absurdity and suggesting a more practical option where he could contribute part-time. He glared, muttered something under his breath, and stormed to his room, sobbing. Lauren's reaction stunned me. She asked if I had considered the emotional trauma of denying him, questioning whether I truly understood maternal instincts. I was speechless. 4 years of care, patience, and love, and now I was suddenly the villain. After that day, the atmosphere shifted permanently. Jake whispered secrets to Lauren when I entered the room. Lauren began questioning my intentions, my love for her son, and whether I was treating him fairly. Arguments became routine. Every attempt to defend myself was twisted into proof of my duplicity. And yet, I held on, desperate to maintain the family we had built. I could never have predicted that all of this was laying the groundwork for what would become the most shocking betrayal of my life. Now, as I stand in the driveway, the sky a dull gray above me, I watch Lauren's tears and Jake's sly grin. In that moment, I understand. This was never about a car, a rule, or even respect. It was deliberate. Every whispered accusation, every glance, every staged incident had been orchestrated for months, and I, blinded by love and trust, had been powerless to stop it. I take a deep breath, letting the chaos wash over me, knowing I will need to unravel it all to survive, not just for me, but for my own sense of reality and justice. The story, as they say, begins here, but the real nightmare is yet to come. After that car incident, I began noticing the finer threads of Jake's strategy, the subtle ways he'd plant doubt, twist reality, and make Lauren see me as the villain. At first, I tried to reason, to address the issues calmly. I reminded myself he was 17, an adolescent with growing pains. But each day it became painfully clear that this was no ordinary teenage rebellion. Jake had mastered a performance that alternated between charm and hostility, depending on his audience. With Lauren, he was perfect, the affectionate son, the attentive child. But as soon as her back was turned, his tone shifted. He became distant, monosyllabic, deliberately cold. He would ignore my attempts at conversation, walk away mid-sentence, or roll his eyes when I tried to engage. It wasn't just behavior, it was psychological warfare. I could sense him calculating, waiting for the right moments to exploit Lauren's biases. The first subtle signs had seemed innocent, even playful. A teasing remark about my cooking, a jab hidden behind a compliment to his mother. Over time, those small barbs compounded, eroding the trust I had in my own perception. I confronted Lauren once, gently, hoping to share my perspective. Jake seems to act differently around me and around you. I feel like I'm being pushed out. Lauren's response cut deeper than I expected. Courtney, you don't understand him the way I do. He's only trying to protect me. Sometimes you need to give in a little, or you'll hurt him emotionally. The words stung. I had spent years caring for him, supporting him, loving him as part of my family, and yet here I was being accused of causing emotional harm. My heart ached with the injustice, but I swallowed it. I had to remain composed. For Evan, for the house of cards we'd built together. The next escalation was predictable in hindsight. Jake wanted the latest smartphone, a designer jacket, gaming equipment, all justified under the guise of necessities or what my friends have. When I hesitated, he would pout, sulk, or claim I didn't understand him. Lauren, of course, would step in, often asking, "Are you sure you're being fair to him?" I began to feel invisible, as if my words, my logic, my love meant nothing in the face of their combined manipulation. I would catch Jake smiling to himself when Lauren wasn't looking, a flash of satisfaction, a glimpse of triumph. That smile was a warning I ignored at first, a subtle sign of the storm gathering behind the walls of our home. One evening, I tried again, this time with a softer approach. Jake, I want you to feel safe and heard. But some things need limits. Can we compromise? His eyes narrowed, and he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for Lauren to hear, "She doesn't get it. She never gets it." Lauren's gaze shifted, her lips pursed, and she asked me, "Do you think I'm raising him wrong? Do you think he's being dishonest?" I froze. That question, innocent on the surface, was exactly the trap Jake had designed. My defense sounded defensive, my explanation suspicious. Every attempt to clarify was twisted, every concern reflected back as proof of my alleged failings. By now, small incidents had escalated into daily interrogations. Lauren would observe interactions, asking pointed questions. "Why did he cry just now? Did you scold him too harshly?" Every word I spoke, every action I took, seemed to be under her microscope, filtered through Jake's carefully crafted narrative. The tension was suffocating. I felt like a guest in my own home, a stranger under constant suspicion. My love for Evan and Jake, my commitment to this family, was weaponized against me. And yet through it all, I remained silent in moments when my voice might have helped, afraid that confrontation would make things worse. I remember one particular night, a storm outside pounding against the windows, reflecting the storm inside me. Jake demanded a new gaming console. Again, an extravagant request I refused. Lauren intervened, insisting that denying him would hurt his emotional well-being. I tried to argue, but my words fell on deaf ears. Jake smirked, as if rehearsing some private victory, his plan unfolding seamlessly around me. It was then that I began documenting everything: receipts, messages, financial transactions, and unusual behavior patterns. A gnawing suspicion told me this wasn't just teenage rebellion. It was calculated, deliberate, and aimed directly at undermining me. I didn't yet know the full extent, but the pieces were starting to fit together like a sinister puzzle. Each night, I replayed the day in my mind, analyzing every word, every look, every micro-expression. The emotional exhaustion was relentless. I felt trapped between a boy who seemed to be testing the boundaries of manipulation and a woman who was blind to his subtle machinations. And in the deepest part of my heart, I realized this was only the beginning. The calm facade of our family life had been shattered, and I was about to enter a war I hadn't anticipated, a war for trust, truth, and the very soul of the family I had worked so hard to build. The nightmare was seeding itself quietly, yet inexorably. And the first major blow, the one that would test every ounce of my patience and courage, was still ahead. It all came to a head one chilly evening. I returned home from work, exhausted but ready to unwind, only to be met with a scene that felt like it belonged in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Lauren stood at the foot of the stairs, her face pale, eyes glistening with tears, clutching Jake's sleeve as if it were evidence. "I need to show you this," she said, voice trembling. Jake's arm bore a fresh bruise, my stomach sank, my mind blank. I had never, ever raised a hand to him in anger. Panic surged. My first instinct was to reach for him, to reassure Lauren that something had gone horribly wrong, that I had never harmed her son. I didn't do this," I stammered, my voice tight with fear and disbelief. "I swear to you, I never touched him." Lauren recoiled as though my denial was a threat. "Courtney, he says you did. He's terrified." I glanced at Jake, standing silently, his expression unreadable. For a fraction of a second, I caught a glimpse of something in his eyes, a flash of triumph, quickly hidden behind fear. And in that instant, clarity hit me like a thunderbolt. This had been orchestrated. Every smile, every pouting session, every whispered accusation, it was all part of a deliberate plan. The air was thick with tension. I wanted to scream, to shake the truth out of them, but words seemed useless. The fear in Lauren's eyes made her deaf to logic. She ushered me toward the door. "Please, just leave until we figure this out. I can't have him near you right now." And just like that, after 4 years of love, effort, and devotion, I found myself forced out of my own home. My belongings were thrown from the upstairs window as if I were some intruder. The cold night air stung against my skin while Jake watched, a faint, concealed grin playing at his lips. I drove away, my hands trembling on the wheel, mind racing. How long had he been planning this? How meticulously had he orchestrated every interaction to ensure my downfall? And most importantly, why? In the days that followed, the truth began to surface in fragments. Financial records showed unauthorized withdrawals, gifts, gadgets, luxury items, all under Jake's direction, often with Lauren's tacit approval. Every time I tried to explain or intervene, I was met with disbelief or subtle condemnation. The culmination of all these manipulations, the bruise, the car incident, the constant undermining, was now crystal clear. Jake was no longer a child merely testing boundaries. He was a strategist, a master manipulator, exploiting both his mother's biases and my trust to devastating effect. I began documenting everything, every text, every interaction, every unusual behavior. The evidence was beginning to form a pattern so undeniable that even Lauren could not ignore it forever. But for now, I was powerless. And yet, through the despair, a strange clarity emerged. I realized I had two choices: crumble under the weight of their deception or rise, collect the truth, and reclaim my life. My love for Evan, for the family I had tried so hard to nurture, demanded the latter. I spent sleepless nights replaying every incident, every smile, every tear, trying to untangle the reality from the illusion. The emotional toll was immense. I felt isolated, heartbroken, and enraged all at once. The betrayal cut deeper because it came from those I had loved, trusted, and sacrificed for. But amidst that pain, a resolve formed. Jake had revealed his hand, and I was determined to counter it, not with anger or retaliation, but with clarity, evidence, and unwavering truth. The stage was set for the confrontation that would determine everything: my integrity, my dignity, and the very future of this fractured family. I knew then that the storm was far from over. The real battle, one that would expose lies, manipulation, and hidden agendas, was only just beginning, and I was ready to fight, even if it meant tearing apart everything I had built to save what was real. After leaving that night, I felt hollow, like the home I had built with love and care had been erased in a single heartbeat. But beneath the shock and despair, determination began to take root. If Jake and Lauren wanted a war of deception, I would respond, not with fury, but with truth. I started meticulously gathering evidence. Bank statements revealed months of unauthorized withdrawals, gifts, gadgets, luxury items, all traced back to Jake's schemes. Text messages and videos showed him rehearsing stories, staging incidents, and practicing his fearful expressions when confronting Lauren. Each piece built a mosaic of deliberate manipulation. I hired a private investigator, Marcus, an expert in adolescent deception and digital tracking. At first, it felt absurd, even paranoid, but the more I described Jake's patterns, his sudden emotional shifts, his contradictory behavior around Lauren, the timing of every conflict, Marcus nodded knowingly. "This is calculated," he said. "He's been orchestrating this for months, if not years. It's methodical, strategic, almost like a chess game." Marcus helped me trace purchases, deliveries, and communications. Every indulgence, every tantrum, every whispered accusation was part of a coordinated plan to undermine me and position himself as the innocent son. Lauren, despite her love for her child, had been unknowingly complicit, swayed by appearances and emotion. Armed with evidence, I confronted Lauren and Jake at a neutral location, a quiet cafe where the public eye would prevent further theatrics. I had to be calm, collected, and precise. The weight of 4 years of devotion, manipulation, and heartbreak pressed on me, but I refused to falter. I sat opposite them, placing a thick folder on the table. "Everything you need to see is here," I said evenly. "Bank records, receipts, messages, videos, it all paints a clear picture." Lauren's eyes widened as she flipped through the documents. Jake fidgeted, the confident mask finally cracking. The room felt heavy with the unspoken truths, and for a moment, time slowed. I didn't realize," Lauren began, but I cut her off gently. "You were deceived, yes, but it's time to face reality. Jake's actions were deliberate. He manipulated both of us. The truth is here, and it cannot be ignored." Jake's face drained of color. The smugness, the rehearsed fear, the careful performance, all gone. He tried to explain, but his words faltered against the weight of evidence. It was a moment of reckoning. I felt a mix of vindication and sorrow. 4 years of love, care, and patience had been tested by lies, and yet I had endured. I had not lost myself entirely. In the aftermath, boundaries were redrawn. Lauren began to understand the consequences of her blind faith, and I reclaimed my life, one step at a time. I didn't return to the home that had become a stage for deceit, but I carried with me something more important: clarity, strength, and the knowledge that truth, no matter how delayed, cannot be buried forever. I walked away that day empowered, scarred but unbroken. The trust I had extended, the love I had given, and the patience I had practiced had not been wasted. They had taught me resilience, discernment, and the courage to stand for what was real. And as I looked ahead, I realized that this chapter, painful, dramatic, and devastating, was also the beginning of a new life, one built not on manipulation, fear, or false appearances, but on truth, self-respect, and hard-earned wisdom. The storm had passed. The wreckage remained, yes, but so did I. And for the first time in months, I felt the faintest glimmer of peace.